Welcome to JTOL, Just Thinking Out Loud, where everyday discussion for everyday people are spoken out loud. Now here's your host, Sonia Green.
Welcome, everybody. Hi, hello, what's happening? What's up? Let me just sigh. Listen, you can see everything. I'm trying to listen. It's been a long way. I just got back from North Carolina, so I'm trying to get everything lined up. Welcome again to JTOL TV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green, and are really excited about today's show. I've been wanting to have this conversation for many of time, never understood it, always saw people with it, heard very little about it, just had an idea. But I have a very, very special friend of mine, sister in the Lord, wonderful woman of God who been through this process. And I've been like, I need to get her on so we can hear about it. And but I just wanted to just say, hey, welcome back. Thank you all for coming on. Thank you all for sharing. I know it's a lot going out there here in these streets. And so please continue to stay with us so we can just share the pulse and the things that we are concerned about out here in these streets. So I'm going to bring up my guest, Miss Alexandra, but we call her Alex Steffens. And we are glad to have you here. Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. So Alexa, we call her Alex. I'm sorry, I'm writing a movie, and so it's a play on name. But anyway, I've been knowing you for, oh my God, for at least so many years, right? And wanted to come in, and she's taken a step that I don't know anybody else who's ever done it. We've heard about it through the celebrities, right? We heard Kim did it, and we heard that Kim did it. What's her name? Angela Bassett did it. We've heard a lot of celebrities who've done it, and they kind of call it the rich man. Only rich people can afford this thing, right? So, but I want her to come in and just explain to us the process and how it goes. So before we do, you were probably wondering, what is surrogacy? Why did she always bring stuff up? Because I want you to always be informed. So what is surrogacy? Surrogacy is the process of giving birth as a surrogate mother or in arranging such a birth. For some, welcoming a child into the world is among life's top priorities, right? Some of us just desire to have children and can't. If a woman is unable to carry a pregnancy to term, surrogacy may be the best option, also called a surrogate. A gastrocarrier is a woman who carries and delivers a child for a couple or individual. So the surrogate mothers are impregnated through the use of intro fertilization. Now, we've always heard that. Short, it's called IVF. In this process, doctors create an embryo by fertilizing eggs from the intent mother or an egg donor with sperm from the intended father or a sperm donor. Because of the gastrocarrier doesn't provide the egg, she is not genetically related to the child. So she's just a big incubator, or what do you want to call it? Like a bag that carries your groceries home, right? Better words. Traditionally,
The oven.
The oven, right? So traditionally, surrogacy uses an intended father's or donor sperm, but not an intended mother's or donor's egg. This means the surrogate is the biological mother of the child. Because of this, there's a greater risk for intended parents and additional required steps, such as legally adopting the child. I'm just reading. After I'm reading this, I'm just laying some groundwork. In gastronic, I just said that word, gastronational surrogacy, the surrogate has no biological connections to the child. A sperm and egg donor are used in a process that is considered safer and more ethical by most professionals. So tell us about your experience. That's what I want to hear about. Tell us why you decided. Well, just tell us something about yourself first, and let me just shut up and let you go ahead and do your thing.
Yeah, no problem. So I am 33. I am married to my husband. He is the rock in my life for sure. We have been together for, it'll be 18 years this year. We've been married for about 12. He always knows those dates a lot better than I do. And we have 3 kids, 3 boys, 11, 10, and 6. They keep me on my toes. I'm constantly going and moving and always something on my schedule. I think right now we have no days off. So we do a lot of baseball. My oldest son plays travel baseball. So my husband and I actually started our own team this spring. So we're excited about that. And I'm a very type A personality person. So I always have about 50 things on my plate all at one time. I'm always trying to strive for a goal, always trying to accomplish something. I'm not very good at sitting still and resting. That is a challenge, even with the Lord, to just kind of be obedient and to follow God's instruction when he says that it's time to rest. And I say that because that will come up later. Whenever I talk a little bit more about some of that. So,
okay. So tell us how many, so I know, because I kept seeing you pregnant. I'm like, I'm going down there to talk to all these babies. So how many you have became a surrogate for many couples? So as I read, there's 2 types. There's the gastronal, and then there's the ones when you're donating your eggs. So which one were you?
Yeah, so I was a gestational.
Gestational. See, I knew it. I've been saying it on back here.
Yep.
And it just didn't come out.
Nope, you're good. I knew what you meant when you said it.
Okay. I need them to know, because I'm like, I do know how to say that word, y'all. Gestational. Anyway.
Yes.
So how many?
I have no biological connection to the baby that I was a surrogate for.
So how many have you birthed?
Just one surrogate baby now, but I am in the process of probably doing another journey here in the next year or so. So
listen, I had my 3 kids. I was like, I ain't having no more. It hurts. But I think it's a commendable thing to do. If that's something you want to do, I really commend you for that. So what made you want to get involved in this? What said, I'm going to do this for someone?
Yeah, so it was probably about 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. My brother and my sister-in-law, now ex-sister-in-law, were having some difficulty having babies. They were trying, just were not able to get pregnant. And I had offered to be her surrogate at the time. They had since are no longer together and have moved on with their lives. But ever since I kind of offered that up to her, it really stayed in the back of my mind. I'm just really passionate about the fact that I have had 3 children that are healthy, and all of my pregnancies have been, for the most part, very healthy and easy. I've never had a miscarriage. I have never had a stillborn. All my pregnancies have been very smooth. And I know that not very many people can say that. And that is very humbling to me. Not a lot of women have the ability to say that their fertility has been an easy part of their life. And so that just gets me fired up, because I want to be able to help in any way that I can. And so this was just one way. It sat in the back of my brain for a long time. I think God kept kind of hinting at it, but it just wasn't the right time. I was trying to get some things figured out with my own life, and the opportunity came up. And so I was like, all right, God, this is what we're going to do. So I just jumped right in. And it was definitely, it's been a very humbling journey, for sure. So that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow. So tell us the process. So after you said, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to carry someone, I'm going to carry a child for someone, because I feel that this is just, some people just need some extra help. It's no different than us helping other people do some other things, except yours is carrying a life. So when you decided, okay, I'm going to do this, what was the next step? What made you? What happened after that? What?
So I reached out to, I have a mom's group on Facebook that I have in my area. I reached out to that group and asked if there were any moms who had done surrogacy in the past, or anybody who knew anybody, basically networking. I had a lady who had messaged me about an agency that she had used in the past. And just she highly recommended it. So I reached out to that agency. I completed an application, but that unfortunately did not go through. So there are some pretty strict guidelines that have to, and criteria that you have to meet in order to be a surrogate. And so that first agency denied me. It was about a 3-month process from the time that I filled out the application until I found out that I wasn't able to move forward with that. At that point, I decided to look at another agency, because that's one of the things with surrogacy as well, is that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agencies throughout the United States, and all of them have different criteria. There is a general state, like a general list of criteria, but there are some that are stricter than others. There's some that are more expensive than others. And it just kind of depends on which one you go through. So I went through an agency called Pitter Patter Surrogacy. They are my lifeline. They have been my lifeline through this entire process. And I filled out an application with them, and the entire process, I think from application to really when things start moving, is about 3 to 6 months, depending on how quickly kind of they can get paperwork done and you can be matched with a family. So from there, then we started kind of the process. I had to make sure that I had a physical completed with my OBGYN as well as my primary care doctor. Both of them had to sign off essentially and say that I was healthy enough to carry a pregnancy. And at that point, they start matching you essentially right off the bat. And matching involves, they take families who have applied to get a surrogate, and they have them fill out this big old questionnaire that has all these questions about them and their personalities and what they want in a surrogate, what they don't want in a surrogate. And they match that with a questionnaire that I fill out as a surrogate, and they figure out if you're going to be a good fit. And at that point, then you do an interview with those families to see what's going to be a good fit. So some of those questions, I mean, it's like 100 question questionnaire. It's a lot. But it asks simple questions, even down to like, what's your favorite flower? What's your favorite color? Where do you like to eat? What is your lifestyle like? Are you busy? Are you, laid back? What is your personality? What's your family background? History of medical things, history of mental illness, just lots and lots of questions to see what it is about you. And so basically the families who look at this profile are looking at this and they're trying to figure out, okay, is this somebody who we can really mesh with and we can get along with? Because it can be a very stressful process. It can be a lot. You're carrying a human being. So, and you're carrying their human being. So you really have to put yourself aside for most of the process. While you can advocate for yourself to some level, at the end of the day, you are carrying someone else's child. And so they want to make sure that there's somebody that you can get along with for a 1 to 2 year process, for the ups, the downs, the struggles, the victories. You have to be able to get through those processes. Yeah.
So I just want to say there are a lot of women who can't have children for whatever reason, but their uterus is not functioning. It might not be healthy. Women who will acquire disorders that make their uterus unsuitable for pregnancies. Especially Black women carry fibroids, or scarring of the urine cavity. Women who have medical conditions that put them at significant medical risk if they become pregnant. Women who have a history of recurring miscarriages. That's another thing. And I just want to say to those who will watch this and watch this later on, there's nothing to be ashamed of about not being able to have children. You know, we don't, if someone loses their arm, we don't say, oh, we say, oh, you know, that they lost their arm, but God put something in place, what they call prosthetics, to be able to replace that arm if you lose it. And so here's the same way with women who are willing to carry children for you. So I don't want anybody to feel ashamed that you can't have children. You know, just remember that God always has a ram in the bush. We always like to say that, you know, we always like to say those type of things. So let's move on. Says when you entering your surrogate match. So do they what do you said some of the things they look at? I know I got a couple of lists of some things like what's your family like you said, your interests and hobbies, your education. So why would they ask you those type of things? Does because that kind of determines how serious you are or your character, you know, or type of person you are carrying a child, you know, or would they say that does play a part?
It does. Yeah. I think it's just they want to look at the whole person. You know, they want to know who you are. They also want to make sure. So another part of the process is that the surrogate has to go through a psychological evaluation. They want to make sure that you're stable, that you have a good support system, that you're in the right mindset to be able to do this. And not to say that people who don't have a master's degree can't be a surrogate, because you absolutely can. But they want to make sure that you are stable. That's a big part of it, is making sure that you are a stable individual. You're financially stable, you're mentally stable, you're physically stable. They want to look at all of those aspects of you, but specifically with the matching, you know, just kind of going back to that where, you know, personality plays such a big part in things, and how you handle conflict. That's another part of it, you know. And there's going to be times when difficult conversations come up throughout this process, and you need to be able to demonstrate your character and how you handle conflict in those situations. You know, can you have an adult conversation and say, I am okay with this, I'm not okay with this. Okay, what do you want to do from your end? What do you want to do from your end? One example of that is just, you know, one of the things that you really have to think about is one of the questions is, are you willing to terminate a pregnancy if the biological family asks you to do that? It's probably the hardest question that I encountered. I have my own spiritual beliefs. I have my own personal beliefs about that. That would only occur typically in the event that, say, for example, an embryo is transferred and they do genetic testing and they figure out that this baby is going to be very unhealthy. They're not going to be able to live, you know, for a long time. They're not going to have a productive life. They might have a genetic condition, something to that effect, to where a family they may not want that burden, or that, I don't want to call it a burden. I don't think that's necessarily the right word, but they might not want that challenge maybe. And so you have to kind of look at yourself in that and see, are you willing to be able to do that? Because like I said, at the end of the day, it's not your child. And so that's a big part of it, is figuring out if you can get through that process.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah,
so
it is a lot.
I keep calling, forgive me, Alex. So when we come back, I want to talk about the medical procedure and also the cost. So I just want to say what happens during that time, and you know, what's the process, the things you have to do to get prepared for this great process. So listen, you all, this is a great subject. I think this is one of those untapped subjects that we really need to talk about. And I thank you, Miss Alex, for coming on. I've been knowing her at least 10 years now. And when her babies were little. So
yeah.
we want to talk about this conversation because we don't talk about it. So listen, y'all, we'll be right back after these station breaks. And this is Sonia, or also known as Hot Sauce, from JTOL TV Talk, you know, subsidiary of JTOL Productions, with my special guest, Alexandria Steffens. but we call her AKA Alex. And we're talking about surrogacy and all the ins and outs of it, things that we have no idea about. So if you all will just be kindly share, listen, learn, talk about it. We'll be right back after these station identification. We'll be right back.
Easy on the chain.
Savage.
Sports.
Savage.
Sports.
Savage.
Sports.
We ain't taking no short. Savage.
Sports.
Savage.
Sports.
Savage.
Sports.
East, west, south, north. Savage.
Sports.
Savage.
Sports.
Savage.
Sports.
We ain't taking no short. Savage.
Sports.
Are you ready? Are you ready? You know what I mean? Good collard green. We stay on the scene. Good collard green. You know what I mean? Good collard green. We stay on the scene. Good collard green. Yeah.
Welcome back to JTOL TV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia, also known as Hot Sauce, with my special guest, Alexandra Steffens. We call her Alex, and she has been a surrogate mom, and she's explaining to us, we don't know. We just know what we see on TV. We've all seen those Lifetime movies where they paid a surrogate mother to have the baby, and she decided, no, I want to keep the baby and try to kill the mama and take the daddy. So that's our experience with surrogacy, right? So he's like, no, ain't no chick. No, we ain't trying to do that. So
No.
he has been explaining to us about, the processes and how, what they look for when you have a surrogacy, become a surrogate. And then also what the process is. And not only that the different types of surrogacy we talked about, and the kind that she's dealing with is gestational.
Yes, there you go. You got
Yes,
it.
I should remember that. I've been pregnant 3 times. And she's talked about that and what's the difference in between those two is traditional and gestational. One is when the woman either supplies her egg, right, and she carries the baby. And then there's the one where the parents, the mom and the dad, supplies the egg and the sperm, and all Alex is a incubator walking. Literally,
pretty much.
literally put. So tell us the process. So let's say they accepted you already, and so what happens after that? What's the next step? You passed all the tests, you met all the criteria. So let me ask you this before you do that. How long? You said it takes 3 months for them to just review your application, right? Then you have to take tests and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
let's start from the point after they accept your application. What happens next?
Yep. So then you are matched. You go through matching. That can take anywhere from 3 to, around 3 to, however long, 3 months to however long it takes for you to be matched.
Can I ask you something? What is matching? What does that mean?
Yep. So that means that they are trying to link you with a family that is going to be the best fit. So you are basically going to go through kind of like interviews. Essentially, they're a lot more laid back than a job interview. But the process that it was for me, I had a couple families who had basically seen my application, seen that questionnaire that I filled out, and said, "Hey, we think that she might be a really good fit. We'd like to meet her and see if we mesh. There's good chemistry. We can communicate about things." And so you go through you can go through as many or as few as needed. I was blessed with only going through 2 interviews. The first one, it's basically a Zoom call. You get on. They can be anywhere in the country, or really even anywhere in the world. And I say that because my intended parents were in Spain. So they can be anywhere, and you basically get on this call. It's facilitated by someone at the agency, and they go through and they just ask each of you questions, and they allow you to converse about the process, what you expect, what you don't expect, what you are okay with doing, what you're not okay with doing. There's a lot of contractual things that happen within a surrogacy when you're looking at, dietary things. You're looking at what you are and are not allowed to do throughout the pregnancy. And those are all things that you want to be upfront about. So for example, if an intended family says we want her to eat all organic and be vegan through the whole pregnancy, is that something that's realistic for you as the surrogate to be able to do? And if it is, then absolutely, then that means it's one more thing that you connect on.
So who pays for all that food?
So the agency, and essentially at the end of the day, the family, the intended parents are the ones that are paying for the entire process. So if they would like you to eat organic, they might provide you with a stipend every single month to be able to buy that food. Personally, I am not a organic person. I am not a tofu eating person. I don't do all of that. So that was one of the things in my questionnaire. I said, I might be okay with eating some organic if it means that I don't have to step way out of my comfort zone with my regular diet. But I want to be able to, if I have a craving for a Big Mac, I'm going to take myself down to McDonald's and get myself a Big Mac. So, and there's some families who are okay with that. And there's other families who would be like, no, we need you to be 100% on it, that type of thing. And so they just want you to spend that time conversing and discussing those things. And so for me, I had one family, the first interview that I had, they were great. I didn't have any issues with them. There was no concern. We agreed on a lot of things. But for me, it just came down to chemistry. And I say that because my next family that I interviewed with 2 days later, we got on the Zoom call, and it was within 5 minutes that it was like we were instantly connected. The closest thing I can compare it to is trying on your wedding dress. You go to try on a wedding dress and you just know that that's the one that you want. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know that in your gut, it's what you feel. And that's very much how it was for me. And it was like that for the intended parents as well. And they had said that even as soon as we got off of that Zoom call, both of us called our coordinators and we're like, we want each other. We're good.
So it's a lot to deal with chemistry and personalities and different types of things. So you guys agreed, and then so what's the next step after that?
Yep. So then you go into legal contracts. Legal contracts are drawn up. Each, the intended parents and the surrogate are both given their own lawyers. They go through, they meet with their lawyer. The contract is drawn up on what literally the entire process is going to look like. They put any restrictions in there. They put travel restrictions. They put all of the financial pieces of the process in there. What it's going to look like for cost on both sides. You were talking about cost a little bit ago. So I know that for my contract, my family was required to have at least $10,000 in escrow at a time. So they could not allow that escrow to drop below $10,000. That varies by agency. I do know that the process can be, I think at minimum starting at 50,000, it can go up to 200,000, depending on the agency, but also depending on how strict or what your criteria is for a surrogate. So, for example, the first agency that I had was in Baltimore, and I think theirs started out at least 150,000. And that also means then that their criteria for being a surrogate is going to be a lot tougher. Because people are paying out more money. I know that intended parents, in a lot of cases, they save up for years for this. They save up for years. They might mortgage their house. They might do these processes to be able to go through this. And so it can be financially taxing. But you kind of look at the benefits, and what you have at the end of this whole process is you have a child that you might not have been able to have before. And so for my intended parents, it was every bit worth it. And actually I was on a sibling journey. So I was a surrogate for their second child. So they went through the process twice, actually. And that was amazing to see. And be able to provide not only this mom and dad with a baby, but also a sister. So
wow, that's wow. So because the baby doesn't have all you're doing is carrying the baby. The baby has all the characteristics because the egg and the sperm belong to the mom and dad, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So
in my circumstance, the father was the biological father, but they had a donor embryo. Mom was not able to provide an egg from her side just because of medical reasons. And so they had a donor embryo. And that donor embryo was the same for their oldest daughter as well as the one that I had as well. So they are full biological children, even though it was through a surrogate.
wow. So you went through the IVF
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yep.
You went through
Yep.
that.
So at that point, you go through your medical screening. I went to Utah twice because I had 2 embryo transfers. But before that, I went to Utah because that's where their fertility clinic was. So all of their embryos were being held out there. So I went to that clinic and I went through a medical screening. Came home, I got my psychological evaluation, got that taken care of. And then at that point, you really plan for embryo transfer. And that's kind of the biggest next step from there.
Wow, that's awesome. So once you are implanted with the baby, and you just carry the baby to full term, and then once the baby is born, you look at the baby. Of course, everybody wants you to carry it. You want to see what the baby looks like, of course, and then you just transfer it. For lack of better words, forgive me, Lord. Just hand the baby over to the parents. So what happens if you lose the baby or something happens? It's not anything incumbent upon you, or is that written in the contract or something?
Yep, all of that is in the contract. They literally plan for best and worst case scenarios.
Okay.
They want to have every single thing lined out so that in the event that anything happens, to the best of their knowledge, obviously, there's realistic things that you can never prepare for, but to the best of their knowledge, they want to have preparation and a plan for every single thing that happens. So if I were to get into an accident, a car accident, my family is not liable for that. I have a life insurance policy So the agency provides you with a life insurance policy, so that if anything were to happen throughout the pregnancy or delivery, then my family is covered. Because at the end of the day, yes, it is their child, but this is my life too. My life matters. I have kids, I have a husband, I have commitments in my own life, I have family, I have all of these things too. And so we want to make sure that your surrogate's taken care of, you know.
So how did your kids, how did you explain it to your kids, and how did they feel about it? What did your husband think? Just if, was it a, go ahead, I'm gonna shut up.
Nope, you're good. So Justin is a very laid back person. Also knows me very, very well. We had conversations about it. And he pretty much was just kind of like, if this is something that you want to do, I'll support you 100%. He has been by my side through the entire process. So he was very supportive. The boys, that was an interesting process. So we started this in 2020, at the end of 2020. My boys were 9, 10, and 4 or 5, something around there. So this was the opportunity for us to have the sex talk. So we opened that up because I felt that I couldn't very well explain the process of surrogacy without knowing how traditionally having a baby happens. That was something that was my own preference. Knowing my kids and knowing the questions that they were going to have, I wanted them to be as prepared as possible. They were already asking questions about, sexual activity and things like that anyway, not like in depth, but just they were kind of getting to the age where they were asking questions about where babies come from and things like that. So we jumped right in. And I basically explained to them, I used the analogy of a plant with a seed, and said, if you take a seed, much like biblically, if you take a seed and you put it on concrete, what's going to happen with the seed? And they both, I really only did this with my 2 older ones. The younger one was still too young to be able to understand. But my 2 older ones, they said, well, it's not going to grow. And I said, you're right, it's not. But what if you take a seed and you put it in dirt and you water it and you put sunshine over it? And what's going to happen to it then? And they said, well, it's going to grow. And I said, that's what this is. So normally a mom and a dad have a baby together. In this situation, they're taking a seed and they're putting it inside of me so that I can grow that baby in a healthy environment, because concrete versus dirt and soil and sunshine and water, those are 2 different things. And you're not going to get a flower out of an unhealthy environment. And they really, really resonated with that analogy. And we also read books. I ordered books on Amazon for my youngest one, especially. There's a book called The Kangaroo Pouch, and he loved it. It really breaks down what surrogacy is in a child-friendly, easy to understand way. So I think they overall handled it very well. There were times, especially with my hormones, and when you go through IVF, your hormones are all over the place. You have grumpy days, you have days where your patience is very minimal, and not by any control of your own, essentially. So we did have some days where we just kind of had to take a deep breath and remind them that, the end goal of this is that a family gets a baby. And so we have to sacrifice in some ways, and we also have to give a lot of grace. And so that was kind of how we handled it with them.
Man, I love that analogy about the seed, the dirt semen. That's very good. Wow. I really like that. So listen, we're going to take another station break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about, we talked about your family. How did they feel about it? We want to talk to you we want to talk about your experience when you had the baby, and did you have any emotional ties? And also a question that I have asked and I found out the answer. So, which I think is excellent. So we'll be right back, guys, after this station break. This is Sonia, aka Hot Sauce, with my special guest, Alex, and we're talking about surrogacy, pregnancy. All right, awesome. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's up? I'm Coach E, the owner of Fit Habit Fitness and Supplements. Most of our clients come to us because they don't have time to get to the gym. They hate sharing equipment at the gym. They need more accountability. They need someone to prepare a meal plan and monitor their daily food intake. They hate doing cardio all day. They hate drinking shakes all day, and they want real food. They need to lose more than 50 pounds, have small children at home. They want not just a six-pack, but they want their life back. They want to build confidence, look great, but also feel great. They want to lose the weight and keep it off as a lifestyle change. Get off the high blood pressure medication, the list goes on. Our online training is a new and exciting way for me to offer cost-effective fitness and nutrition, life-changing transformation coaching for the entrepreneur who works from home, who needs an effective program without the limitations and expenses of the gym. Our coaching program can be utilized by anyone, anywhere, offering convenience, responsiveness, flexibility, and accountability. Best of all, I can empower my clients with more accountability and support than I ever could in person. So I want to talk to you today. Let's schedule a free consultation and goal assessment so I can see if you will be a great fit for our fitness and nutrition coaching program. Click the link below to get started today. Let's get fit. Peace.
I say this to any marriage that's in a bad place, or
Yes,
couples
sir.
who are considering getting married, but y'all are in a bad place. It was a wisdom key that has helped me in Evelyn. Nothing is ever solved constantly going back to the past. If you want to bring a healing to your marriage, you're going to have to own your past. Call it what it is. I did it. I done it. I confess it. And then let each other agree to build a new beginning. Something in this society is happening right now wherein it's a craziness that people's past sins, failures, weaknesses, even ignorance can't change. Well, I believe in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that if any man or woman be in Christ, they can become new creatures. Old things can pass away, and all things can become new.
Hey, welcome back to JTOL TV Talk, where I'm your host, Sonia Green, also known as Hot Sauce. And I have my wonderful, wonderful guest, Alex, and we're talking about surrogacy pregnancy, all the things that I've been wanting to ask questions about, things that we have no idea about. So we had a great conversation so far. We talked about cost. We talked about how did our children feel? What was the process? How did you decide to become a surrogate mom? You know, all the things that we need to do, but need to know, what's the process, questioning as far as physical, questioning psychological, what else, and all those things, and what's entailed in contracts. So, but I didn't ask you this. How did you feel after you had carried this child? Well, they say 9 months. It's 10 months, 40 weeks, like on the Noah Ark. So how did you feel? You know, do you feel any connection to the child? How did you feel?
So this is a very long, extended answer. I'm going to try to sum it up as quick as I can. So being a surrogate is the mental headspace. You really have to know and learn how to compartmentalize. And, you kind of, it's something that I personally, I prayed about for a long time beforehand to make sure that it was something that God not only knew that I could handle, but something that I was okay with going through. And he was okay with me going through. And so we kind of, from the very beginning, I really had to just kind of ingrain it in my brain. This is not my child. This is not my child. This is not my child. She doesn't belong to me. One of the things that a lot of people asked throughout the process was, how are you going to give her up at the end? And my response was always the same. It was, I'm not giving up anything because it's never mine. She never belonged to me in the very beginning. So I'm not giving up anything. I'm simply carrying a child for a temporary amount of time. I actually have a shirt that said extreme babysitting. And I loved it, because it definitely explains the whole process to people who have no idea of kind of what that looks like. And so at the end of the whole process, we, my delivery was very smooth. It was the easiest of all of my pregnancies that I have had. And intended parents were in the room. Well, intended mother was in the room for the delivery. I was not comfortable with intended dad being in the room, but that was something that I was very upfront with in the very beginning. And so I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit, my brain is not following. Yes. So dad, I was upfront about that in the very beginning and said, I'm just not comfortable with dad being in the room. It's just for modesty purposes, for my comfortability. And my husband's in the room, and so I didn't want him to be uncomfortable either. But afterwards, I really, I think I felt more energetic even than what I have with my own pregnancies. I've heard a lot of surrogates, even before I started the process, talk about the fact that surrogacy is like a high almost. It kind of puts you in this place because you're so humbled and blessed to be able to go through this process and give this to someone. And that's very much how I was, even down to the way that I looked after pregnancy. My hair was not a mess. My face was glowing. I look back at pictures and I just see some of those things about myself that I didn't recognize in my previous pregnancies with my own children. And I think that speaks for the fact that this was definitely God's purpose. And so I did have some times there. It's an emotional journey. So, and like I said, you have to be able to compartmentalize. So the day after I delivered I had a little bit of a tough moment in the morning. That was the first night that I didn't have this baby with me essentially in 10 months. And so being without her overnight, when I woke up the next morning, that was, a realization for me. And so I took a minute in my hospital room. I took a deep breath. I cried for a little while. I just kind of had to pull myself together. And then I went and visited her in the room across the hall. And that was a huge blessing to be able to do that. So, and the family was very understanding. They had been through this process before, so they understood that I'm going to miss her. That is a natural biological thing that is going to happen. There's as much as you prepare for it, there's nothing that you can do to avoid the biological aspects of it. So yes, bear with me for just a moment. I'm so sorry. Okay.
I hear your voice.
Yeah, he's in the background here pulling on the door. I just texted my husband to please get him. So anyway, so yes, the day after was a little bit, I had that moment in the morning. I would say that the hardest part emotionally was leaving the hospital. This was a pregnancy and process. I had my own 3 babies, and you leave the hospital without or with them when you have your own. And this time you leave without a baby. And that's a very heavy thing. I cried the whole way home on the way home from the hospital. My husband was unbelievably supportive. He just sat and let me be and let me go through that process and I spoke to this through the whole thing. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. That's my job. So I have some background in mental health, and I know kind of how to handle emotions. And I also know that when you go through things that you were meant to do, you also have to allow yourself the time to process. And just because it might not be easy or because you need that time to process doesn't mean that that wasn't God's purpose. And it doesn't mean that it shouldn't have ever happened. And I needed him to understand that. And I had some very select few people in my life that really understood that. And I needed people to understand that even in those moments when emotionally I needed to go through that, I also needed them to just understand that this is part of the process, that I'm not regretting it. I'm not saying, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm not saying this was a really horrible experience. It's just that there are some aspects to this biologically that you have to be able to go through naturally. You're connected to this child and this baby from the very beginning all the way until they're born. So you're going to have some biological response to that. So leaving the hospital was a little bit difficult. And then in those first 2 weeks when your hormones are really coming down, it's a challenge. But again, you just have to go through that process. And so my mom came out and stayed with me for quite a while. She was with me for a couple of weeks before the baby was born. And then she stayed with me for a week or two afterwards. And there were days where we just sat in the living room and I just cried in her lap, and just, it was missing, not necessarily the baby herself. It was missing her presence. You go through this process for 10 months of having a living being inside of you, of feeling them kick, of, experiencing all of these side effects from pregnancy. And then you don't have that anymore. And so having that loss of presence is a little bit of that's a process to try to understand and to try to work through. And those are all things I think that I had really studied about, prayed about, talked to other people about. I was a part of a support group on Facebook for surrogates, and that really helped. And so you kind of prepare yourself as much as you can. The one thing I was not expecting that kind of came out of nowhere, and I think I just kind of give people a heads up on this, I guess, if you are going to be a surrogate. For me, as a type A personality, someone who's always working towards a goal, somebody who always has something on her plate that she's working towards. I was working on my master's degree while I was in this process of being a surrogate, and I had graduated. And then all of a sudden I was pregnant for the last, 6 months of that. There was an overlap there. And then this baby was born, and I was sitting on the couch one night, and I felt this kind of loss of purpose a little bit. And I just found myself emotional because I was like, what's next? What do I do now? Where do I go from here? What does God have for me now? Because now I'm where I am in my career. I did this surrogacy. I have given a human being to another family, and now I don't know what's next. And that's where I was kind of speaking to in the very beginning, is at that point, God said it was time to rest. And that was hard for me because God brings that to you, and he says, when it's time to rest, it's time to rest, and we need to focus on ourselves. Yeah. And so I had to take that time to really just focus on me. If there were things that God was dealing with me, I needed to kind of draw into those. And so that's kind of where I've been for the last couple months.
Wow, that's awesome. I commend you. I'm always saying, wow. So listen, this is what I found out. So we got a few more minutes. We got about 5 more minutes. This is what I found out. I always had a question, and I said, if a person of color, let's say, I say, hey, Alex, I need you to have a baby for me. would that matter, but it doesn't. It's just
does not.
you're just an oven.
Yep.
It's dirt.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
You're
Yep.
not semen.
I did always wonder what that would be like. And I don't mean that in a racially inappropriate way, but to carry a baby who's a different race than me, that would be very interesting. I did carry a Hispanic baby. My intended parents were from Spain. So she came out Hispanic looking. So that was, it was amazing. I do still have contact with her. They send me updates and pictures of her. I get videos of her. But it is very much like a aunt and niece relationship. That's the closest that I can come up with in terms of kind of relationship.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because they said it after you explained it perfectly. Is that once you put it in the dirt, you're just the dirt, and everything, whatever that seed is intended it to be, whether it's apple, oranges, pears, or whatever, it's going to continue to be. That doesn't matter the type of dirt, right? The dirt, well, you want good dirt, so you don't want the junkyard dirt. So listen, I got one more question. I want you to think about this one. Play one more commercial, and I'm gonna come back, and I want you to offer some advice and some wisdom for anyone who's considering this process, or whether to engage into someone being a surrogate, hire someone to be a surrogate for them, or to be a surrogate themselves. All right. So listen, y'all, we'll be right back. We're going to show this last commercial, then we're out of here.
Calling ENT.
I need everybody to repeat after me. I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary. They can't never stop the party, let me stop the people. Well, ain't you high? Ain't you high? I'm high off the people. I'm high. I'm high.
That was my Black History moment there. I wanted to show that's I forgot his name. His last name is Hampton. He's down there where you are, you guys. Well, you where are you? Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, so Fred Hampton, that's his name. They got a college for him in Richmond. So anyway, so my question to you is, when we left off, again, welcome back everyone to JTOL TV Talk. What's your advice you would give to anyone in either circumstances?
Yeah, so I think as IPs or intended parents, just be patient. It's a long process. My intended parents, they were unable to get pregnant for 16 years. They had tried and tried and tried everything and were not able to get pregnant. But this process opened up for them, and this opportunity opened up for them. And so it just puts a whole new perspective on waiting for the rain or waiting for God, and just trusting that it will happen. You see evidence in the Bible of people who were in their 60s and 70s having babies and some things like that. And so just be patient as intended parents, because if it's meant to be, it will happen. And prepare as much as you can. As a surrogate, again, just be patient with the process. Trust yourself. Get a good support system. That I cannot stress that enough. My husband was a huge support in that. My mom was a huge support in that. And even my spiritual mother was a huge support throughout that whole process. And just, you know, talking, opening up, verbalizing when you're feeling strong feelings, because if you don't talk about them, you can't figure out how to work through them. And then just kind of, I think just one kind of cautionary thing, just be careful who you let into your circle. I had certain people in my life who didn't really understand the full process. They didn't understand how I could do it. And what the process was. And I kind of learned that there were certain people that I needed to hold very close and others that I just kind of had to trust God to explain it to, because they might not have, they just don't understand. They mean well, they are not malicious or hateful or anything in that regard, but they just didn't understand fully. And I needed to trust myself and trust that I knew what I was doing and I knew what I could handle. And so just kind of being careful about who you kind of let into that circle. That would be my advice. Oh, and one other thing I just wanted to mention really quickly. So throughout the video, and just to educate, I learned in the process that when talking about a surrogate, not to refer to them as a surrogate mother, but to refer to them as a surrogate carrier. There is a difference between the two of those. I think in the old days, they used to be referred to as a surrogate mother, but as we have kind of gone through time, it was kind of implied that because you were a surrogate, you were a mother to that child. And so sometimes it can just come off a little bit differently. And so I think now the general term is surrogate carrier. And that is usually kind of the way that we refer to ourselves. So.
Well, thank you for helping us. I really bless you for this. And thank you for taking out an hour and a few minutes out of your time to really explain this process, because we really don't know. As far as we know, all we've seen is Lifetime, and we know what happened on Lifetime.
Yes.
So, but you compared it and made it sound so loving and so kind, and a godly thing. And we don't have to look at it as something we're not able to do, or as a negative that I can't carry a child. God is so smart. He always puts something in place. As we always like to say, he always has a ram in the bush. And thank you for being a ram in the bush. I appreciate it so much. And listen, we're not done. We're going to have this conversation again. But I really tell your husband, everybody, I thank them for allowing you to, take time out of your family and just come and share with JTOL TV Productions and explain this process, and so we can have a better understanding and make wise decisions and choices without feeling guilty or condemned in the choices we make regarding, surrogacy, period. And but I appreciate it so much. Listen, I'm gonna put you in the green room. Do not eat up all my food. I'll be down here in a minute to holler at you. This is Alexandria Stephens. We call her Alex. She was a surrogate. What did you call surrogate? Carrier. She was a surrogate carrier, and she came to explain to us the process of what it is, what's ins and outs of this process, to take the spookiness and the Lifetime aspect out of our minds to show that it is a loving, caring process, that that it is done, and there's nothing wrong with you not being able to have children. God has placed people out there that will carry the child for you. You just need to find that right person. So, excuse me. God bless you, sis. I'll see you. I'll talk to you in a minute. Listen, you all, thank y'all for rocking with us on JTOL TV Talk. Excuse me, my voice just left. Listen, we got coming up next week. We got Power Couple Week, my favorite week of I love doing these Power Couple Weeks where we come and invite couples on, and they tell us about what it's like being married. And so here's the thing: this year's theme is Love Endured. So I'm looking to hear what they have to say pertaining to that. But listen, check us out. We'll be on every day next week, starting the 12th, with different couples from the 12th through the 19th, I believe. And I'm looking forward to hearing. Got some great guests, great guests. God bless you. This is Sonia, also known as Hot Sauce, coming from you from the JTOL. Can't be the production. This is my crib right now, but we get in the studio together. Listen, check us out next week. And listen, remember, boots on the ground is always the one to have the heart of America. And how do we do that? How do we change America? One conversation at a time. God bless you. See you next week.
Join us here next time on JTOL, Just Thinking Out Loud, where we ask and answer questions no one is willing to ask.